Hello everyone, it's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And yep, it's still John Ford, but it's September now, and we are now in the final months of this John Ford marathon that is an 80-week endeavor. And we're going to be talking about Mogambo, and joining me for this episode is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much, as always, for coming on and watching these John Ford movies with me.
Happy to be here. I'd probably be watching them anyway.
That's the truth most of the time. But for those who have not tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments. We have coming attractions for Friday, September 6th. And then we'll be getting into our feature film, Mogambo. Then we have some recommendations for you. So, this is a big week for box office, as it's tracking to be the 3rd largest opening weekend for any film this year. And don't say it 3 times, but it's okay to say Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Jess, why are you excited about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice?
I love the first one. I've been compared to Lydia Dietz a non-zero number of times. I don't personally see it, but and I thought someone had said her from Heather, or Winona Ryder from Heathers. Turns out he meant Beetlejuice.
Oh.
I was extra confused.
Interesting.
But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a classic.
I feel like the Heathers one would make more sense than the Beetlejuice one, to be honest.
Yeah, neither really made sense to me.
Nobody has said I look like Beetlejuice, so I will take that as a win. But no, I'm excited for this too, because the first Beetlejuice is so much fun. It is exactly what Tim Burton does great. And there seems to be hints that maybe Tim Burton has things back on track with this one, which is an exciting prospect. I enjoyed Wednesday well enough. I do feel like it suffered from the same thing that happens to so many of these shows nowadays, is that why are you making things into shows that like could be half the amount of episodes and stuff like that. But the vibes worked, and the Jenna Ortega worked, and Jenna Ortega is going to be in this, which her casting as a young Winona Ryder's daughter in this it works. I'm just really excited to have Michael Keaton back as the juice is loose. And then having people like Willem Dafoe join, Danny DeVito join, Monica Bellucci joining as well. So it seems like it's going to be and Justin Theroux. Apparently he's really good in it, which I'm not the biggest fan of Justin Theroux. So we'll see.
Wasn't he in Parks and Rec?
Yes. He's the story stealer.
He's the douchey boyfriend.
Yes, the story stealer. Yeah. He also co-wrote, if I'm not mistaken, Zoolander. And he was also like the weird DJ guy in Zoolander. Justin Theroux's in a lot of things. And apparently now Beetlejuice. So I'm excited to see Tim Burton getting back to his roots a little bit more. Dumbo was kind of like forgettable. It was kind of meh.
I forgot about it.
And I think that was the last feature film that Tim Burton directed. So it's been a while. Miss Peregrine's
House for Extraordinary Children or whatever.
Peculiar Children had its moments. It definitely was like, it was 100% Tim Burton vibes, and the Eva Green in it also reinforced that. But like things like Dark Shadows and stuff like that just feels like he's been doing his whole shtick for too long, and hopefully this feels fresh and exciting. The trailers got me for sure. It definitely looks like it's going back to like the practical effects and the zaniness and the weirdness and stuff like that. Now, something completely different, which is our feature film of the week, which is Mogambo from 1953. Let me read you this plot synopsis that seems to have some judging in it for one particular character. On a Kenyan safari, white hunter Victor Marswell has a love triangle with seductive American socialite Eloise Kelly and anthropologist Donald Nordley's cheating wife Linda.
Do we actually see them boink? It's implied, I think.
They kissed. So
yeah, if that's 1953 boinking.
So if that's your standards there, but I just want to point out that it didn't say like the wife of an like it goes through this, cheating wife, like, that she only exists as Nordley's wife. I'm like, that's some...
He's not doing a very good
job
at
all I am saying is I don't think I appreciate the plot synopsis that they have on IMDb.
He's a bit of a dork.
I think it's a little judgy.
It is a little judgy.
But this was from 1953, shot in Technicolor, and you can tell, starring Clark Gable as our White Hunter, Ava Gardner as our socialite, and Grace Kelly as, yes, a woman who is an actual woman who just so happens to be the wife of an anthropologist. This was shot on location in equatorial Africa, in Kenya. Whole soundtrack is tribal music from the Congo, so picking up some like legitimate culture from the area, based on the Wilson Collison play Red Dust, which was previously made into a film in 1932 set in Vietnam and also starring, you guessed it, Clark Gable.
Interesting.
The word Mogambo actually has no meaning.
It's nonsense.
It was taken from a famous club called Mogambo. And they just the producers wow, kind of like the sound of that.
Maybe they misread it as a G.
The studio wanted to capitalize on the remakes of King Solomon's Mines and Quo Vadis, so they remade Red Dust as well. Rain and alleged assassination threats against Clark Gable turned this into a shooting schedule that was plagued with all kinds of delays and craziness. Grace Kelly won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress, was nominated for the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and Ava Gardner was also nominated for Best Actress for this. So, to the women who starred in this movie and got most of the praise from the awards. But Jess, what are your general thoughts on Mogambo?
It was less problematic than I thought it was going to be, so that's a good...
True.
Good step. I really liked the review I saw that said that it was set in Africa, but really we don't get to spend any time at all in most of Africa, aside from the taking of animals.
Well, so they do have African tribes in it, but you don't... The only custom that you really get to know is that they throw spears at people to test their courage. And I'm also convinced that was not a real tradition, and they just came up with it when the white people showed up. It's like, hey, this is a tradition of ours. You should totally do it. But no, they don't really... There's the music, and there's some really amazing shots of Africa.
Beautiful.
Because John Ford really knows how to shoot a film and has an eye for landscapes. It was very different seeing this kind of landscape and not like Monument Valley. Cinematographers Robert Surtees and Freddie Young were the ones who shot this film. I'm not surprised there's multiple cinematographers on like a big shoot like this out in the jungles of Africa and out in the plains. But yes, this movie is really focused on the white people involved.
And their stupid bullshit.
And their bullshit. This is very much a classic Hollywood romance in like a foreign land. So like out of Africa, and like a lot of other kinds of films that really leaned into like, hey, it's two beautiful white people, or three in this case, in love with each other out in an exotic place. And yeah, so that really is capturing, that's the extent of Africa. And there are some really awesome shots of like safari footage of the animals and stuff like that, of elephants and gorillas and
some
Black Panther.
Some mild animal cruelty.
Yes.
Very sad.
There's some sad moments where you have Victor who winds up shooting some animals trying to protect the dumbass white British people. Specifically those two.
Specifically Donald.
Yes.
Who's like... I thought there was a moment when he asked about Clark Gable's wife, his character's wife, if he had a wife. I was like, man, he's really admiring this guy. But no, he just was asking questions.
And he was suspicious.
I mean, he should have been more suspicious.
He 100% should have been more suspicious.
Like, he's just like, oh, that's weird, man. Going on a walk alone with my wife. Okay.
Well, even earlier when Grace Kelly's character I'm just going to go for a walk out in, the jungle.
The plains of Africa.
Yeah, and winds up killing another animal because of her stupidity.
She is responsible for... It's sad. I mean, he's catching... Clark Gable's character is catching animals to sell to zoos and circuses, which is super sad because he's got like a baby elephant separated from its parents, and baby gorillas are trying to get separated from their parents. It's just sad. It makes me sad.
Like, this certainly was a time where that was much more acceptable, and like that was happening.
I feel like there were some mild hints, like almost environmentalism, and he was like, I don't want to shoot them unless I have to. Like with the gorilla, he's like, at least I really didn't want to.
He at least has some kind of honor code going on here.
Hunters generally do.
And he does not want to kill the animals unless he has to, and he has to protect a couple dumb British people. Making dumb decisions out in the jungle.
Some strong mid-Atlantic accents.
It's one of those kinds of things where this film certainly is mostly about the romance. It like really is. And when you have three very charismatic actors who are very attractive people, that goes a long way in selling your romance. Like, Clark Gable is certainly that old-timey Hollywood movie star. And at this point in his career, I saw one comment, this was Clark Gable's first great performance since World War II. Also, like, this is post, if I'm remembering correctly, like, his wife dying in a plane crash and stuff like that. And, like, his life was not in a great place.
He'd lived some life.
He, like, has the streaks of gray. He still has that Clark Gable mustache and stuff like that.
A little smarmy.
But then you have the much younger women, compared to him in this movie. Ava Gardner, I think, is, like, the real standout to me.
She's fun.
She is fun.
She's responsible, I think, for 0 animal deaths. We like that.
And then Nordley's like, oh, you're so funny. Ha 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 ha. Right in front of his wife.
They already had a bit of a rivalry.
Yep. And I think
you don't want your husband anyway.
I think Eloise Kelly as a character is much more interesting than Linda Nordley, who's just like
Grace of an anthropologist.
Yes, Grace Kelly uses her charisma and her beauty and really sells that. She's just, this prim, proper woman out in the middle of the jungle
Princess of Monaco.
Who has the hots for daddy. Clark Gable over here at this point, because let's do some math here. So this was 1953. Grace Kelly
she was young when she died.
25.
Wow, that's sad.
Playing a 27-year-old. She died when she was 52 in 1982.
I've seen her grave.
And Clark Gable was 52. He was literally twice her age. Slightly more than twice her age.
It's fine.
Who actually also died when he was 59 in 1960. So he died less than a decade after this. And then Ava Gardner was born in 1922. So she was 31. So he was still like 30 years older than her, so it's like 20 years older than her, so it's that kind of
the same age.
Who, Ava Gardner and Clark Gable?
No, Ava Gardner and Grace Kelly. You can tell, I think.
They were like 7 years apart, almost a decade apart.
Well, when you compare it to 25 years.
Yes, compared to Clark Gable, yes, they were considerably closer in age.
Doesn't seem so far.
But I feel like Ava Gardner's character has a lot more agency, and I thought was going to stick up for herself. And then, like, last twist at the very end, jumps out of the boat.
That's asking a lot of this.
Swims back to Clark Gable, because he's just that damn charming.
I thought she was going to get mauled by a crocodile, but...
That grin, with all those teeth and that mustache, just got her right back to the shore.
Yeah, what an unchanging mustache.
Yep. It's this film. I think the love triangle romance works in terms of like, yeah, it's a love triangle romance. There's not. I understand why both Well, actually, I understand all of it. I understand why Clark Gable's attracted to both of them. Because they're extremely attractive. And I understand that both of them have... He's alluring in the way that he is very different than what they're used to. Nordley is such a nerd.
He's swaggering.
He's a nerd. And Grace Kelly's this young, beautiful woman, and, like, you have this rugged, like, powerful, strong, confident man who, you know, does stuff. And he's a man of action. And
he earns his own money. He wasn't born with a silver spoon, I think. Nerd guy said it one
Yeah, Nordley alludes to that,
he
too.
He calls it out. He's like, I know I was born with a silver spoon, but you made your own living. I was like, okay. Yep.
It's one of those kinds of things where I understand where they're all coming from. I'm not saying all of them are very interesting characters. Particularly Linda's not an interesting character. But I do feel like Victor and Eloise are interesting enough characters here. And then you have, like, supporting characters like John Brown Price, a.k.a. Brownie, who's not one of the black people in the movie.
The first scene you meet Brownie, he's in there with an African guy, and I just looked at Shane and was like...
Somebody said Brownie.
God,
I'm like,
I hope that's the white guy's name.
And then you have Father Joseph, because of course there's a priest, and...
A very progressive priest.
Eloise does confession at one point, and Nordley brings up evolution and stuff, and it's we could have a spirited debate here, which they don't. The film doesn't go that
Nordley
far.
backs immediately down.
Yes. The fear of God went into him, Mr.
The fear of Father. He even says, he's like, I don't think you can keep up with Father Joseph. He's like, yeah, no, I don't even want to try.
There's some supporting characters here. I think the selling point of this is, do you like a good romantic triangle with really attractive people? Boom, this movie has it. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a ton of real adventure elements. It's more of there's some quick thrilling moments in the film involving the animals, but I think it's more the animals. And
being animals.
Yes, and you seeing the animals is pretty cool. And I think for 1953, that probably was even cooler. Because, like, I could go on the internet and look up videos of the animals and stuff like that. You wouldn't just be able to do that in 1953. But I feel like this film had opportunities to dig into something deeper. There was a scene with one of the tribes trying to capture this man for poaching. And, like, it's, like, acknowledges that. Mm-hmm. It acknowledges the debate between religion and science. It acknowledges the existence of the idea of conservation, but it never really digs into any of them. And I
think it would make him look really problematic, because it's like, how come it's bad for this tribe to poach ivory, but not this guy taking whole animals out?
Mm-hmm. I guess at this point, Jess, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to put out there about Mogambo?
No, I was okay with this movie, except for the sad animals.
This is, so, like, out of the 64, I think, films of John Ford's that I've watched so far up to this point, about 18 of them I feel like are films that I would really, really like and really enjoy and would really be excited to go back to. I feel like this is on the edges of, like, I would still watch this again, but it's not something I'd get excited about. And I don't know if it's quite, like, there's probably, like, a good 10 or 12 of them that I think are, like, great movies. But this one, I think, this is a really fine film for what it's trying to do. There's a lot more that it could have done.
It accomplishes what it set out to do.
Yes, it was comfortable in being what it wanted to be. Now, Jess, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
I would like to recommend Fraggle Rock, both original series and Back to the Rock. It's fun, and it's got some stuff for kids in it. I mean, it's not Bluey. It's not as deep as Bluey, but I really enjoy it, and the theme song is a banger, so I'm going to recommend Fraggle Rock. I think it does justice to Jim Henson.
Has some killer songs.
Yeah, there's a lot of jams that comes out of that, honestly. I mean, at least one per episode. They're not all, like, pristine, I'd listen to this on repeat, but I like them.
It has some good themes. It's a fun time.
Kids will probably like it.
It's on the nose in terms of like what it's trying to portray.
Oh yeah.
A relatable variety of different Fraggles. And what are the little
the doozers.
Workaholic things that you keep saying that I am?
The doozers?
Yes.
Cotterpin and I forget
I'm a doozer.
Name. I'm a Fraggle, yep.
Yep, there we go.
You just build buildings and I just eat them. Just ruin your work and then you're like, wow, more work, this is great.
Yes, more work, I love it. But Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock is a ton of fun.
It's
and
fun.
Every time there's a new season, that's automatically the first show that Jess wants to watch on our ever-growing to-watch list. So we always go back to The Rock whenever Apple TV Plus decides to bring us back to The Rock.
I really just want to clap to the theme song.
Yeah,
it's a jam.
So, new film that I watched. We hadn't recorded these in a little while, so I watched this a little while ago. Honestly, I'm probably going to recommend not the one that I had originally. I'm going to recommend The Wasp. This was a thrilling...
It subverted expectations.
If I knew it was based on a play beforehand, I don't know if it would have reshaped my expectations, but this becomes a really intense, claustrophobic thriller.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Naomi Harris of Pirates of the Caribbean fame and Moneypenny from the more modern James Bond movies with Daniel Craig.
That's where I've seen
And then Natalie Dormer, a.k.a. Marjorie Tyrell from Game of Thrones. They're both amazing in this. And one of the things that I really appreciated about it was the editing. Because when they cut back to flashbacks, how they edit the transition are jarring and interesting and dynamic.
It's like a trauma response,
yes.
Really.
And it makes it feel a lot more interesting than just like and going back like flashback. And also you need that once the film kicks into like you spend I don't know, like 30-40 minutes in the same place.
It's a bit of a slow burn at times.
To a point.
At least to get started with the
whole setup of it all.
Yeah.
Which I'm not even going to bring up anything. Because the trailer sells you a different movie, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't know what the real movie is going in.
No, I liked not knowing.
And then, off the watch list, The Bridge, which this was a German war film
that was devastating.
about a group of young men who wind up being brought on as part of the last remnants of the Third Reich, because Germany is falling. They're retreating. The Allies are coming, and this just turns into such a harrowing and haunting experience and representation of war, and through the eyes of teenagers.
They don't pull punches at all.
Who should not even have been there, but
no.
you know.
And everyone says that the whole time. Like, and it's just. Like I mean, it is unflinching.
That one mother, like, desperately pleading for her son not to, and then her son wanting to be, because like you spend a good 20-25 minutes just living their lives in this small town.
They're just playing around. They're being kids.
They're teenagers. They're just doing their thing, and then where this film takes them is quite impactful. Now, speaking of other Nazis, one of the films of mine that I rewatched was Green Room, which is a horror thriller about a punk band who winds up getting caught in the green room of a neo-Nazi-owned club when somebody gets murdered, and then this turns into a brutal, extremely suspenseful thriller. Anton Yelchin does such a great job in the lead. Imogen Poots is one of the women that was at the club and then winds up getting locked up with this band. Aaliyah Shawkat. There's a couple of like young actors that I didn't realize were them the first time I watched this, and now they've become a lot bigger. I think one of them was Josh O'Connor from Challengers, which was interesting. But the big casting in it is that they got Patrick Stewart to be the leader of a neo-Nazi group. And you have Macon Blair, who was in the director's previous film, Blue Ruin. And this is just such an intense movie, and it's so violent and graphic. There's at one point a machete. Like, what it does to Anton Yelkin's arm is disturbing. And they use dogs. And these dogs eat. Let's just say that. Which is also interesting because they'll show one of the guys getting eaten alive by a dog, but then they cut away from a woman getting eaten alive by a dog. So, it was a very... I specifically noticed that while watching the movie. But no, it's pretty graphic. This is a thrilling movie. It is unflinching. So, yeah. Jess gave you a fun one. I gave you some 3 demented movies. So, go watch The Fraggles over on Apple and chill the hell out.
Have a little palate cleanser.
But Jess, thank you as always for coming on and talking some John Ford movies with me.
You're welcome.
Jess will be back on next week for another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. And then we're slowly getting into the end game here, and we'll be starting Wes Anderson come January, which I'm very much excited for. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.